She kissed me goodnight like she always did. Her perfume lingered on my shirt, soft and familiar. The air was still, the kind of quiet that should have felt safe. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about nothing and everything at once. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was something deeper that wouldn't let me fall asleep. Then I heard it, a faint buzz. It wasn't loud, just enough to slice through the silence. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then it came again, the soft vibration against the nightstand beside her. She didn't move. Her breathing was steady, slow, peaceful. I looked over and saw the glow of her phone screen lighting up the room for just a moment before fading to black. Something in me stirred. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even suspicion. It was that strange instinct that whispers before your mind catches up, the kind that tells you something isn't right. I told myself not to look. I told myself I was better than that. But my heart was already pounding, and curiosity had turned into dread. We had been together for 3 years. We'd survived fights, distance, money problems, and moments when love felt like work instead of magic. But lately, things had changed. She had changed. Her phone had become her constant companion. She'd smile at the screen and say it was just a meme or a coworker. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I lay there for a few minutes, trying to calm down. The digital clock beside the bed read 12:42 a.m. The glow of the numbers felt like they were watching me, daring me to move. Another buzz came. This one longer, sharper, like the universe wasn't going to let me ignore it. So, I reached out. Slowly, carefully, I took the phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up again, and her name flashed across the top. A message preview followed by 3 words, "I'll never forget. Can't stop thinking." The contact name was hidden behind a heart emoji. No photo, no full name, just an initial, the letter MUN. My stomach twisted. My first thought wasn't anger, it was denial. Maybe it was a friend, maybe it was a cousin. Maybe there was some explanation that would make sense if I just waited until morning. But the truth doesn't wait. It claws at you until you face it. I opened the conversation. The screen filled with words that didn't belong in my life. Flirty texts, late-night jokes, promises to meet again. Words like, "miss you," and "last time felt perfect." I scrolled further, and my hands started to shake. These weren't old messages. They were from that same day, while I was at work, while she was texting me about dinner plans. Her breathing changed slightly beside me, and I froze. She turned over, her arm brushing against mine, her face half buried in the pillow. I stared at her. The woman I thought I knew, the one I defended, trusted, and loved without conditions. I should have been furious, but all I felt was hollow. I put the phone back, quietly, as if returning a secret to its hiding place. I lay there staring at the ceiling again, only now it felt like the ceiling was pressing down on me. I counted her breaths, every rise and fall like a rhythm of lies. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. I couldn't tell. My chest ached like I was holding in a scream that wouldn't come out. I thought about waking her up, demanding an explanation, but what would I even say? I already had the truth. She told me goodnight, but she had texted him right after. What was left to ask? Eventually, I got out of bed and went to the kitchen. The floor was cold against my feet, the kind of cold that keeps you awake. I poured a glass of water and stared at the reflection in the window. My own face looked like a stranger's. Tired eyes, clenched jaw, a man trying to make sense of something senseless. I thought about how easily she'd smiled earlier that night, how she said she loved me before turning off the lights. It was routine, automatic, practiced. I wondered how many times she had done it before, telling me goodnight while her heart belonged to someone else. My mind replayed every small detail I'd ignored. The new perfume she said a coworker recommended. The sudden gym sessions she never invited me to join. The late-night phone calls with friends where she'd step outside to talk. I had built an entire house out of trust, and she had burned it down while pretending to sleep beside me. The clock in the living room ticked slowly, like it was mocking me. I sat on the couch, scrolling through old photos on my own phone. The vacations, the laughter, the mornings we spent making pancakes while music played in the background. All of it felt like a movie that had ended long ago, and I was just rewatching it, refusing to accept the credits had rolled. At some point, I heard her footsteps. I looked up. She was standing in the doorway, half asleep, asking why I wasn't in bed. I told her I couldn't sleep. She smiled softly, said, "I worry too much," kissed my cheek, and went back to bed. I watched her go. The same lips that lied to me. The same lips that whispered love hours after whispering to someone else. I sat there for a long time, letting the silence stretch. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just felt everything collapse quietly inside me, and when I finally lay back down beside her, pretending to sleep, I knew something had shifted forever. Because that night wasn't the night I lost her. It was the night I realized I never really had her at all. When people ask how we met, I still hesitate before answering. Not because it was anything unusual, it was actually the opposite. We met like so many others do, in the most ordinary of ways. But what began as ordinary somehow became everything. It was a Sunday afternoon at a friend's birthday. I wasn't planning to go, but she was there, laughing, glowing, magnetic in that effortless way some people are. Her laughter carried over the music, and I caught myself watching her longer than I should have. I don't remember what we first talked about, but I remember how it felt. Easy, light, like we already knew each other in some unspoken way. We started dating 2 weeks later. Our relationship moved fast, maybe too fast, but it felt right. We fell into each other's routines, shared passwords, borrowed clothes, planned vacations. The kind of couple who posted inside jokes online and texted constantly when apart. There was this blind comfort in the routine. Good morning texts, evening calls, the same restaurants, the same jokes before bed. For a while, I thought that was happiness. She wasn't perfect, but she was perfect for me. Or that's what I kept telling myself. She could be unpredictable, moody one day, affectionate the next. But I liked it. I liked the chaos. She made me feel alive in ways I didn't understand. The first time I realized I was in love with her, we were stuck in traffic during a rainstorm. She had her feet up on the dashboard, hair a mess, singing along terribly to a song she didn't know the lyrics to. I looked at her and thought, this is it. Not the fireworks or the grand gestures, just this quiet, imperfect moment. We talked about everything. Our pasts, our fears, our dreams. She told me about her trust issues, her fear of being abandoned. I promised I'd never give her a reason to doubt me. I meant it. And for a long time, I believed she meant it too. The cracks started small. Late replies. Missed calls. A distance I couldn't name. She'd say she was tired, stressed, overworked. I wanted to believe her. But the way she'd pull away when I touched her, the way her eyes drifted elsewhere when we talked, it was all there, even if I didn't want to see it. Still, I convinced myself that every relationship goes through phases. That people grow and change, and sometimes love just looks quieter. But it wasn't quiet, it was fading. Slowly, silently, like the dimming of a light you don't notice until you're sitting in the dark. I remember the first time I truly felt something was off. It was around 6 months before that night. We were supposed to go to dinner with friends, but she canceled last minute, said she wasn't feeling well. Later that evening, she posted a picture, just a glass of wine, captioned, "Needed this." I asked who she went out with. She said it was just a friend. I didn't press further. That became a pattern. The unexplained nights, the sudden interest in her appearance, the gym sessions that came out of nowhere. I tried to be supportive, not controlling. I told myself not to become the jealous boyfriend. But deep down, something was rotting inside the trust I'd built. When I asked if everything was okay between us, she'd smile and say, "Of course, you worry too much." And that was the end of the conversation every time. We still had good days. The kind that fooled me into thinking everything was fine. Movie nights on the couch. Sunday breakfasts with too much coffee. Random hugs in the kitchen that felt sincere enough to silence my doubts. I held on to those moments, like a man clinging to debris in a storm, hoping it would keep me afloat. Then came the change I couldn't ignore, her phone. She started keeping it face down, the screen always locked. Before, she'd scroll through social media beside me, laugh at memes, show me pictures. But now, her phone had become something private, sacred. If it buzzed, she'd grab it instantly. If I asked who it was, she'd say, "Just work stuff." At first, I didn't question it. But over time, I started noticing how her body language changed when she texted. The soft smile, the way her thumbs moved faster, how she'd look up at me and then turn the phone away just slightly. Love makes you blind, but it also makes you quiet. You start keeping things from yourself, the thoughts, the suspicions, the moments that don't add up. You bury them because you'd rather live in illusion than face the possibility that the person you love isn't who you think they are. There were times she'd come home smelling of a different perfume, one she didn't wear when we went out. I asked about it once, half joking. She said it was her coworker's scent rubbing off after a hug. I laughed it off, but the image stuck. Sometimes I think I knew all along, that my heart recognized the truth long before my mind did. The late-night calls that went silent when I entered the room, the locked gallery on her phone, the distance in her eyes when I told her I loved her. I kept convincing myself it was just a phase, that she'd come back to me, that if I just stayed patient, everything would fall back into place. But that's the cruel thing about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It seeps in quietly until it's everywhere, until you can't tell where love ends and deceit begins. By the time that night came, The night her phone buzzed while she slept. We were strangers sharing a bed. I told myself I still loved her, but it was more out of habit than hope. I clung to memories of who she used to be, not the woman lying beside me. Looking back now, I realized the signs were written everywhere. I just refused to read them. Because when you love someone deeply, you don't look for lies. You look for reasons to keep believing. And that belief was the last thing to die. After that night, nothing looked the same, even though everything still was. The curtains still swayed the same way in the morning breeze. The coffee machine still hissed and sputtered at 7:30, just like always. She still kissed me goodbye before leaving for work. But something inside me had cracked, and I could hear the echo every time she smiled. I kept telling myself to forget what I saw, to pretend the messages were harmless, a misunderstanding, something that would disappear if I ignored it long enough. I told myself that if I didn't confront her, maybe I could unsee the truth. But the mind doesn't forgive what it knows. It plays the memory on repeat until it becomes torture. Every night after that, I waited for the sound. The faint vibration of her phone became my obsession. I would lie still, pretending to sleep, listening for it. And it always came. Sometimes once, sometimes twice, sometimes in bursts, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. She never stirred. She must have silenced the sound long ago, thinking I'd never notice. But you can't silence guilt, not when it hums right beside you. Days turned into weeks. I became two people, one that smiled, worked, joked with friends, and another that counted lies in the dark. She was sweet again, almost overly sweet, the way people are when they know they owe you something but can't say what it is. She cooked my favorite meals. She started wearing that perfume I'd always loved. She even left her phone out in the open sometimes, as if daring me to check. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I already knew enough to break me. But knowing isn't the same as accepting. One night, around 11, we were watching a movie. She was curled up beside me, her head on my shoulder. The room was dim, the only light coming from the screen. I felt her shift slightly, reaching for her phone. She tilted it away from me as she typed. I caught a glimpse of the blue glow reflecting in her eyes. Her lips parted slightly as she read something, a small smile forming before she bit her lip. That same gesture I used to think was meant for me. I felt the air leave my chest. She noticed me looking, tucked the phone under the blanket, and said, "It's nothing, just work." Her voice was casual, practiced. I nodded, pretending to believe her. But inside, something was unraveling. Later that night, when she went to shower, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the spot where her phone had been. I didn't touch it. I just stared, wondering who he was. The man behind the letter M. What did he look like? Did he know she was taken? Did he care? Or maybe he didn't even have to ask, because she never told him. Maybe to him, she was single, free, available. The thought clawed at me. Not because I was jealous of him, but because I realized I wasn't part of her story anymore. I was just a placeholder, the man she returned to between texts, the one she used to keep up appearances. A week later, I gave in. It was a Tuesday, just past midnight. She had fallen asleep watching a series, her phone clutched loosely in her hand. I waited until her breathing evened out, then gently slid it away. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. The screen unlocked with her fingerprint still registered. The chat was still there, and it had grown. There were voice notes now. His voice, low and intimate, calling her baby. She'd replied with laughter. There were pictures too, not explicit, just close enough to feel wrong. A hand on her cheek. A mirror selfie I'd never seen before. Her wearing the necklace I bought her, smiling at someone else behind the camera. I felt sick. My throat burned, my eyes stung, but I couldn't stop scrolling. It wasn't curiosity anymore, it was masochism. Every line, every emoji, every I miss you was another nail in the coffin of who I thought we were. Then I saw the message that killed whatever was left inside me. It was from her, sent that very morning. It read, "He's asleep beside me right now. I wish it was you." I don't know how long I stared at that message. Minutes, hours, time dissolved. The room around me disappeared. It was just me, the glow of the screen, and those words burning into my mind. I wanted to wake her up, to shout, to demand why. But what would I gain? A confession? An apology? I already had both, written in digital ink for me to relive whenever I wanted. So instead, I set the phone back down and walked out of the room. I ended up outside, barefoot, standing in the cold night air. The street was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. I looked up at the sky and wondered how something so vast could make me feel so small. I thought about calling someone, a friend, my brother, anyone. But what would I say? She cheated on me? The words felt weak compared to the weight in my chest. I sat on the porch until the first light of morning. She found me there when she woke up, asked if I'd been out long. I said I couldn't sleep. She smiled, wrapped her arms around me from behind, kissed the back of my neck, and whispered, "You think too much." I didn't respond. Because she was right. I was thinking too much. Thinking about how her lies felt softer than the truth, how easy it was for her to pretend, how impossible it was for me to stop caring. That night became a loop in my head. The buzz, the messages, the cold air, her morning kiss. I played it all over and over until I couldn't tell if I was remembering it or reliving it, and each time I did, it felt worse. There's a point in betrayal when pain turns into silence. You stop reacting. You stop asking. You just exist beside the person who broke you, like strangers who used to share a dream. That's where I was, silent, waiting for the courage to end it, but unable to let go. I wish I'd left that night. I wish I'd walked away before the next part happened, before the confrontation that still echoes in my mind every time I close my eyes. But love, even when it's dying, still begs for one more breath. And I wasn't ready to bury it yet. The night it all fell apart wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic at first. No screaming, no tears, no slammed doors. It was just another quiet evening that turned into the kind of memory that stains you forever. It was Friday. She'd been distant all week, avoiding eye contact, laughing less, her phone never leaving her side. I'd stopped asking questions by then. Every time I did, she'd smile, touch my face, and ask, "Why don't you trust me?" And I'd say nothing. Because trust wasn't the problem anymore. Denial was. That evening, she came home later than usual. Said she'd been out with coworkers. Her hair was damp, her perfume stronger than normal, her lipstick slightly faded. She looked beautiful. Too beautiful for someone who claimed she'd been at a bar with colleagues. She kissed me softly, the way people do when they're trying to reset something broken. "I missed you," she whispered. I wanted to believe her so badly, it hurt. We ate dinner together like always. She talked about work, about her boss, about a new project. I nodded, barely listening. The conversation felt scripted, like she'd rehearsed it in the car before walking in. Her phone buzzed once on the counter. She didn't flinch, didn't even look at it. But her hand trembled slightly when she reached for her glass of water. After dinner, she said she was tired and went to shower. I sat there at the table, staring at her phone. It was face down again, as always. I told myself I wouldn't look. I promised myself I wouldn't go through that humiliation again. But I'd already broken that promise once, and promises mean nothing when trust is gone. The house was quiet except for the sound of running water. I reached for her phone, my hand steady this time. No hesitation. The screen lit up, and my heart froze. The message was there. A single line from M. "Last night was perfect. I can still taste you." My vision blurred. I opened the chat, scrolling up through days of messages, a private world where I didn't exist. The hotel photos, the plans to meet again. The words "I love you" exchanged like confessions between two strangers who thought the world couldn't hear them. It wasn't emotional anymore. It was mechanical. My hands moved on their own, scrolling through evidence of my own destruction. I felt like a ghost haunting the ruins of my own life. The shower stopped. I heard the door creak open, her footsteps moving toward the bedroom. Panic shot through me, but I didn't put the phone down. I just stood there in the kitchen, the screen glowing in my hand, her voice calling out softly, "Babe, you still up?" When she saw me, she froze. She didn't even need to ask what I was doing. Her eyes darted to the phone, and everything between us shattered in silence. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the phone. I just looked at her, really looked, her wet hair clinging to her shoulders, the towel wrapped around her, her eyes wide and terrified. For a moment, I saw guilt. Then, something worse, relief. Like she'd been waiting for this moment, for the truth to finally stop hiding. "How long?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was low, calm, too calm. She didn't answer. Was it worth it? Still silence. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. I turned the phone toward her. The last message glowed between us like a flame. She covered her mouth with her hand, eyes filling with tears. "Please," she whispered, "let me explain." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Explain what? The hotel? The messages? The fact that you told him you loved him?" "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said, voice breaking. "It just did." I stared at her. "That's the thing about lies," I said quietly. "They always just happen." She started crying then, the kind of crying that used to break me. But this time, it did nothing. I felt numb, empty, like my emotions had shut off to protect what was left of me. She reached out to touch my hand. I pulled away. "Please," she said again. "I made a mistake." I shook my head. "No, you made a choice." The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "He made me feel something I thought I'd lost with you," she said finally. "I don't know why. I didn't mean to hurt you." Those words cut deeper than anything she could have said. Because it meant it wasn't about passion or revenge or drunken stupidity. It was emotional, real, something she wanted. I felt something inside me snap. "You lied to me every night," I said. "You looked me in the eye and told me you loved me, then texted him when I turned away. You made me believe I was crazy for doubting you. Do you know what that does to a person?" She was crying uncontrollably now, saying she hated herself, saying she never wanted to lose me. But the thing about betrayal is that once it happens, there's nothing left to lose. I walked past her toward the bedroom. She followed, begging me to stay. I opened the closet, grabbed my jacket, my keys, my phone charger. She tried to block the door. "Please," she whispered, "don't leave. We can fix this." I looked at her one last time. Her face was red, her eyes swollen, her hands shaking. For a moment, I almost gave in, because that's what love does. It makes you want to forgive the unforgivable. But then I remembered the message, the laughter, the lies, the nights I stayed awake thinking I was paranoid. "You told me goodnight," I said quietly, "but you texted him right after. Tell me, which one of us were you saying goodnight to?" She broke down completely then, falling to her knees, covering her face. I didn't say another word. I walked out the door, the sound of her sobs following me down the hallway. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I stood there for a moment, just breathing. The sky was still, the street empty. I felt the weight of everything hit me all at once. Anger, sadness, exhaustion, freedom. I looked up at the window where the light from our bedroom still glowed faintly. Part of me wanted to go back, to comfort her, to fix what she broke, to pretend this was all a nightmare we could wake from. But I knew that even if I forgave her, I'd never trust her again. And love without trust isn't love, it's survival. So I walked. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. The night was quiet, the world indifferent. Every step felt like shedding a piece of the life I once had. And somewhere between one breath and the next, I realized something. Betrayal doesn't end when you find out the truth. It ends when you stop needing answers. I didn't have mine yet, but I knew I'd never find them in that house again. I didn't go far that night, just down the block to the small park we used to walk through together in the early days. The swings creaked in the wind, the benches were empty, and the air smelled like wet grass and rain. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, trying to understand how a life built on love could collapse in silence. The minutes turned into hours. My phone buzzed once, her name lighting up the screen. I didn't answer. It buzzed again, then again. Messages poured in one after another, fragments of panic and apology. "Please come home. We can talk. I didn't mean for you to find out this way. I'm sorry. I love you." It was strange. Reading the words "I love you" from her now felt like hearing a song I used to love but couldn't stand anymore. I turned off my phone, leaned back on the bench, and let the cold night air sting my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely awake. At sunrise, I went back, not to forgive her, not to fight, just to end it properly. She was sitting on the couch, still in the clothes from the night before, her eyes swollen and red. The phone lay face down beside her. She looked up when I walked in, like she'd been waiting to exhale. "You came back," she said softly. "I came to talk," I replied. My voice was steady, too steady. The kind of steady that comes after you've cried everything out and there's nothing left to lose. She stood up, wringing her hands. "I didn't want to hurt you," she began. "I never wanted any of this." "But you did it anyway," I said. She nodded, tears already welling up again. "I know. I'm sorry." The words fell flat. I'd heard sorry before, after small lies, after arguments, after broken promises. But this sorry was empty, hollow, stripped of meaning. "Why him?" I asked finally. "Why not just leave me if you weren't happy?" She hesitated, searching for words. "He made me feel seen. You used to, but somewhere along the way, we lost that. I tried to talk to you, but it felt like you weren't really there anymore." Her explanation wasn't new. I'd heard it in movies, in other people's stories, in the excuses people make when they can't face their own choices. But hearing it from her, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, was something else entirely. "So that's it?" I asked. "You felt unseen, so you found someone else to notice you?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I don't know. I'm not trying to justify it. I made a mistake. A terrible one." "No," I said quietly. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, leaving your keys at work. This was a decision. You made it every time you texted him, every time you lied to my face." She stepped closer, reaching out for me. I stepped back. Please, she whispered, don't walk away from us. I laughed, but it wasn't bitter. It was tired. Us? I repeated. There is no us. There hasn't been for a long time. I just didn't see it because I was too busy believing in the version of you I wanted to exist. She broke down again, sobbing into her hands. The sound filled the room, bouncing off the walls. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But pity is just sadness wearing guilt's disguise. I looked around the living room. The photos of us on the wall, the books we'd bought together, the blanket she always used when we watched movies. It all felt foreign now, like walking through a museum of someone else's life. I sat down across from her. You know what hurts the most? I said quietly. Not the cheating, not even the lies. It's that you looked me in the eyes every night and still chose him. She lifted her head, mascara streaking her cheeks. I swear it didn't mean. Don't, I interrupted. Don't try to make it smaller than it was. You fell in love with someone else, and you kept me as your safety net. She didn't deny it. That silence told me everything I needed to know. I stood up. I'll send someone for my things next week, I said. She followed me to the door, crying harder now. Please don't go like this, she begged. Please, just talk to me. We can fix it. I turned back one last time. You can't fix something that was never real, I said. You told me good night every night, but you texted him after. So tell me, when you said you loved me, who were you really talking to? Her knees gave out, and she collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't wait to see what she'd say next. I opened the door and stepped out. The cold morning light hit me like a slap. Harsh, bright, honest. I walked to my car, but I didn't start it right away. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, shaking. The tears came then, not loud, not violent, just quiet streams that wouldn't stop. They weren't just for her. They were for everything I'd lost. The trust, the belief, the version of myself that thought love could conquer anything. It took hours before I drove away. And when I did, I didn't look back. She called a few times that week. I ignored everyone. She sent long messages, apologies dressed as explanations. I read them all, then deleted them. I didn't need her words anymore. I had her truth, and that was enough. A few days later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was him. I didn't mean for things to get this far, he wrote. She said you were distant. I didn't know she was lying. I stared at the text for a while before replying with a single line. You can have what's left. Then I blocked him. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful. No buzzing, no secrets, no lies, just quiet. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was just the sound of freedom, raw and empty, but real. I wish I could say I stopped thinking about her after that. I didn't. The memories still came, sharp and sudden. Her laugh, her perfume, the way she'd say my name. But every time I thought of her, I also thought of that message glowing in the dark. He's asleep beside me. I wish it was you. And that was enough to remind me that sometimes justice isn't about revenge. It's about walking away and letting the truth do the rest. I moved out a week later. Not dramatically, no shouting, no final scene, just boxes, silence, and the sound of my own footsteps echoing down the hallway. She wasn't there when I left. I planned it that way. I didn't want another round of tears or apologies. I wanted peace, and peace, I learned, comes quietly. The apartment felt hollow, stripped of meaning. The couch where we once watched movies was gone, but the faint indentation in the carpet remained. The smell of her perfume still clung to the curtains, as if the air itself refused to forget her. I took one last look around before closing the door behind me. That click, the sound of the lock sliding into place, felt like the end of a chapter I'd never meant to write. The first few nights were the hardest. The silence was too loud. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, half expecting her to be there beside me, breathing softly, whispering goodnight. But all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. I didn't realize how used I'd become to her presence. Her laugh, her voice, her mess. Even her lies had filled the space. People think heartbreak feels like rage, but it doesn't. It's exhaustion. It's the quiet collapse of a world you built together. You sit there, surrounded by familiar things that no longer mean what they used to. The coffee mug she bought you for your birthday. The playlist she made for long drives. Everything becomes a ghost of something that isn't coming back. I tried to distract myself. Work, friends, the gym, anything to keep my mind busy. But healing isn't about distraction, it's about endurance. Every place I went, she was there somehow. In a song, in a smell, in a stranger's laugh. She haunted me without even trying. About 2 weeks after I left, she reached out again. Not with a text this time, with a handwritten letter. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. The paper smelled faintly like her perfume. She wrote about everything. How she regretted what she'd done. How she missed me. How she couldn't forgive herself. She said she wished she could go back and undo it all. She said she'd never stop loving me. I read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and put it in a drawer. I didn't tear it up, but I didn't reply either. Some words deserved to stay unanswered. A month later, I heard she'd moved out of the city. Mutual friends mentioned she quit her job and started fresh somewhere else. I didn't ask where. I didn't want to know. There was a strange comfort in not knowing, in letting her exist as a memory instead of a person I might bump into again. The human heart is a strange thing. It breaks quietly, then keeps beating anyway. You wake up, go to work, laugh at jokes, talk about the weather, and then some random thing, like the smell of rain or the sound of a certain ringtone, takes you right back to the moment your world fell apart. And somehow, you keep breathing through it. There were nights I almost texted her, not to yell, not to ask why, but to say I missed her. But every time I picked up the phone, I'd remember that message. He's asleep beside me. I wish it was you. And that was enough to stop me. Some wounds don't need reopening to bleed. One evening, months later, I found myself at that same park again, the one from the night I left. The air was cool, the sky bruised with sunset. I sat on the same bench and closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger or sadness, just clarity. I realized something that night. Betrayal doesn't define you. What you do after it does. Some people drown in it, some build walls, but the strong ones learn to swim through it and come out clean. I wasn't clean yet, but I was learning. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks of me, if she ever looks at her phone late at night and scrolls through old photos, the way I used to. If she ever replays our laughter in her head, I'll never know, and that's okay, because closure isn't about answers. It's about acceptance. I've started to sleep better now. The nightmares have faded. The memories have dulled into something softer, something I can carry without bleeding. I still dream of her sometimes, but not the way I used to. In those dreams, she's just another face in a crowded room, familiar but distant. There's a moment every night, right before I fall asleep, when I think of that final night. The quiet room, the buzz of her phone, the glow of the screen. And I hear her voice again, whispering goodnight like she meant it. Back then, I believed her. Now, I understand that people say goodnight when they don't know how to say goodbye. That's what this story really is. A goodbye I never said out loud. A confession not of her guilt, but of my truth. I loved her. Deeply. Honestly. Completely. And maybe that's why it hurt so much, because I gave everything to someone who only gave half of herself in return. But love, even when betrayed, leaves something behind. It teaches you what you'll never allow again. It hardens you in some places and softens you in others. I'm not bitter anymore, just wiser. I've learned that trust is sacred, that silence can be louder than screams, and that sometimes walking away is the only justice you'll ever get. If I could speak to her one last time, I wouldn't ask questions. I wouldn't demand apologies. I'd just say thank you for showing me what love isn't, so I could someday recognize what it truly is. And when I finally tell this story, my story, I'll tell it exactly as it happened. The way she kissed me goodnight, the way her phone buzzed in the dark, the way I found out the truth, one vibration at a time. Because in the end, that's all it was. A single moment, a single sound, a single choice that changed everything. She told me goodnight, but the truth was, she'd already said goodbye.